Hello and welcome. Today, I want you to think of us as cartographers, but we're not mapping old continents or anything like that. Nope, we are charting a landscape that is way more intricate, way more mysterious, the language centers of the human brain. We're going to go on a journey to figure out what happens when this internal map gets damaged, a condition called aphasia. So grab your compass, let's start charting this incredible territory.
Just stop and think about that for a second. What if the words you use every single day, to tell someone you love them, to share a big idea, or to just ask for a glass of water, what if they just vanished? That connection between your thoughts and your voice just gone. It's a pretty terrifying thought, right? Well, for millions of people, that's their daily reality.
And this isn't some rare, abstract thing. It's actually shockingly common. After a stroke, nearly 1 in 4 people, a full 24%, find themselves struggling with some form of aphasia. It's the sudden, profound disruption to one of the most fundamental things that makes us human.
So what exactly is aphasia? Well, it's what's known as an acquired communication disorder. That means you're not born with it. It happens because of a brain injury, and most of the time, that's from a stroke. And it can mess with every part of language, not just speaking, but understanding, reading, and even writing, the whole shebang.
Okay, so every great map has to start somewhere, right? It starts with the first few big landmarks. And for our journey, we're going to have to go all the way back to the 19th century, when these pioneering neuroscientists first started planting their flags and charting the very first bits of language territory in the brain.
And here it is. This is that first classic map. For over a century, this was pretty much our guide. It showed 2 super important spots in the left hemisphere. You had Broca's area, which was for speech production, and Wernicke's area, the center for comprehension. It was simple, it was elegant, and for a very long time, everybody thought this was the whole story. But as we're about to see, the real map is, well, it's a lot more detailed.
All right, let's zoom in on our first big landmark. We're heading straight for Broca's area, which you can think of as the brain's bustling factory for making words, where all the raw materials of our thoughts get hammered into actual coherent speech.
So it's tucked away in this specific little fold in the brain's left hemisphere. It's called the inferior frontal gyrus. And this spot, Broca's area, is our engine of expression. It's in charge of grammar, how we move our mouths to make sounds, and just the general flow of our speech. Think of it like the factory's site manager, making sure every single word gets put in exactly the right place. But here's where our old, simple map gets a massive update. For the longest time, we thought of Broca's area as this kind of isolated island. But with modern brain imaging, we now know it's not an island at all. It's more like the bustling downtown of a huge neural metropolis, what scientists are now calling Broca's system, this whole network of interconnected regions all working together. And inside this big city, there's a really clear division of labor. If you go deeper into the system, you find the parts that handle phonology. Those are the basic sounds of language, like a B sound or a P sound. Move up a little, and you get other parts that are managing syntax, the rules of grammar that let us build a real sentence. And then at the very highest level, you have regions that are all about semantics, processing the actual meaning of the words. It's amazing.
Okay, time to travel across our map to the second great landmark, Wernicke's area. If Broca's is the factory that builds our words, think of Wernicke's as the brain's huge comprehension library, where all the language coming in gets decoded and understood.
It's nestled back here, in the temporal lobe, in a spot called the superior temporal gyrus. This is where the magic of understanding really happens. When you hear somebody talk, or you read a word on a page, that information gets sent right here to be processed. Wernicke's area is what turns a stream of sounds into a whole universe of meaningful ideas. And this is where the brain's design is just so clever. See, the Wernicke's area in your left hemisphere, which is usually the language-dominant one, it focuses on the literal meaning of words, the dictionary definition. But its twin over on the right hemisphere, it's listening for something completely different, the music of speech. It figures out the tone, the rhythm, the emphasis, all the stuff that tells you if someone is asking a question, or being sarcastic, or telling a joke. You absolutely need both for true understanding.
So, we've mapped the 2 major cities of language. But what good are cities if there aren't any roads connecting them? Now we get to chart the incredibly complex highways that let information just zip across our neural map at lightning speed.
And this right here is the main interstate on our map. It's called the arcuate fasciculus. It's this massive bundle of nerve fibers, basically an information superhighway, and it directly connects Wernicke's comprehension library with Broca's production factory.
This connection is what lets you hear a question and then, in a fraction of a second, start to form an answer.
But of course, the real modern map is always a bit more complicated. This superhighway isn't just one road. It's actually a dual pathway system. One path is for phonology, the sounds of language. That's really important for just repeating a word you've heard. But the other pathway deals with semantics, the meaning of the language. It's just a beautifully efficient design.
And, to really appreciate how amazing this network is, just look at this comparison. On the right, that's the language pathways in a chimpanzee's brain. Now look to the left. That's us. The sheer density and complexity of our connections, it's just astounding. This intricate wiring, which took millennia of evolution to build, is what gives us our incredible gift for language.
Okay, so we've got a pretty detailed map of a healthy language network now. But what happens when there's an earthquake, a stroke or an injury that destroys one of our landmarks or just rips up a highway? This is where we start to see the different types of aphasia pop up. And what's so crucial to understand is that where the damage happens on the map determines the type of problem you're going to have. If the production factory in Broca's area gets hit, speech becomes really halting and effortful, but your comprehension is usually okay. If the comprehension library in Wernicke's gets damaged, speech might be fluent, but it's often nonsense because you can't understand what's being said. And then, if the highway between them gets broken, you get something called conduction aphasia. That's where both fluency and comprehension are mostly fine, but the ability to simply repeat something back is just gone. And you can see exactly where that roadblock happens, in conduction aphasia right here. See those red and yellow spots? They pinpoint where the damage usually is. And notice, it's not really Broca's or Wernicke's itself that's hit the hardest. Nope, the damage is right there on the connecting pathways, basically taking out the highway between the two.
This quote, it's from a patient who was just trying to say the word cactus, and it powerfully shows you what happens. The person knows what a cactus is, their comprehension is fine. They can speak, their production factory is working, but the message just gets totally scrambled on that broken highway between the two. They can hear their own mistakes, and they desperately try to fix them, but they just can't get the right sounds to come out. It's like having a word on the tip of your tongue, but magnified 1,000 times over.
So our mapping journey is coming to an end. We've seen the big landmarks, we've traced the highways, and we've seen what happens when it all breaks down. And it just leaves you with this profound appreciation for this incredible system we rely on every single second of every day.
So if there's one thing you take away from our journey today, it should be this. Language is not one spot on the map. It is a distributed, interconnected, and just breathtakingly complex network. Our ability to even have this conversation, to share these ideas, it all rests on the flawless function of this unbelievably intricate and very fragile system.
And that leaves us with one final question to just think about. We've mapped the physical stuff, the brain structures, but what about what it all means? The fact that our entire social world, our culture, our consciousness itself is built on this biological network that's so powerful, but also so vulnerable. What does that tell us about what it really means to be human? It's a pretty powerful thought to leave you with. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey.